Hey guys, Thomas Jr. here, aka Mustached. I'm here to review the movie Pet Sematary. And before I begin, I want to say that I have not seen the original Pet Sematary, or not at least all of it. I've seen like a little part of it, or I think I'm gonna go that if I did see it, I remember the smaller parts of it. Either way, um, I'm looking at the more recent iteration of Pet Sematary 2019's adaptation, the second reboot of one of Stephen King's books turned into a movie. So Stephen King's a lucky guy. He gets another chance at another reboot. I've based on a popular book. There are people who wish they can get at least one of their books turned into a movie, but you know, people like me don't get that kind of luck, I suppose. Syndicate X will just die, and then I'll die, and then no one will care. Anyway, moving on to the movie. We see our family. We have Ellie, the daughter, Rachel, the mother, and Lewis, the father. Alright, now that we have that, family is moving into a new location out in the middle of nowhere. And of course, it's all about the cliche of like, oh, we need this. The husband, Lewis, is like saying they needed to move, and so on and so forth. So the mother, Rachel and Ellie hear something in the distance as they're sort of checking out the area. And they see these kids wearing masks and marching about, and the mother tells her about what that is potentially. That part could have been completely cut and nothing would have been lost. Anyways, we see that Ellie's like watching SpongeBob literally. Meanwhile, she sort of eventually runs off into the forest for some reason. Meanwhile, Rachel gets called by her mom, trying to check in. So Ellie moves into the pet cemetery, and as she's like climbing up the wall, she gets stopped by this elder man named Judd. And he talks pretty briefly about the pet cemetery and what that's all about. So, we're kind of calling out, and all the while Ellie brings up Rachel's sister, and it kind of comes out of nowhere, but I don't know if the voices had anything to do with that question mark. Anyway, Lewis the father doesn't believe. Of course he doesn't. And then we cut to him in the hospital bringing in this kid that's in really bad shape. The kid ends up dying, but he ends up like seeing him like lean up. And he is warned that the barrier should not be broken. He proceeds to see these lights from this truck, and then it wakes up out of the snap. So anyways, Ellie goes over to Judd's, bringing him over cookies, and learns more about him. And then we cut to her, like, doing this little ballet performance. And the old man Judd is, like, invited to their home. And their little cat named Church goes up to him. And, he says something about, like, their home, something or other. Anyway, Lewis wakes up at the night, hearing some sort of noise, and he ends up heading back outside to the back room where he enters the forest. And he follows this voice and figure. And when he wakes up, he notices how messed up his feet are. Meeting up with all these other kids, and then he's called over by Judd, who brings him over to see that Church has died. The cat has died, being ran over by one of the trucks that speeds on through. And meanwhile, Rachel's talking about her sister and has a flashback about the sister and how she thinks about how she ended up letting her sister die after that. Meanwhile, we cut back to Judd and Lewis as they go to bury the body. And they head over that little wall, or they end up in the forest, going deeper inside. Meanwhile, Rachel talks about wanting things taken care of. And Ellie says that she sees Church, and then this is, of course, later on, and she points into this little cupboard area, and then, of course, Church is now there, now hissing at them and stuff like that. So Lois sees this and then talks to Judd about this afterwards, and then he talks about these places that bring people back, or bring animals back specifically. And he proceeds to do some digging on his own. So Ellie tries to clean up the cat. The cat scratches her. And Rachel and Lois have their little moment, and they have their little kissy kiss moment. Meanwhile, the dead Church kills a bird. Hits Lewis as he's like trying to get the cat, and then it ends up like running off. He ends up checking out the basement. Here's the kid that he had killed talking to him. He sees more car lights or truck lights, and then gets pulled out of it once more. Meanwhile, Rachel's like hearing her own little situation going on. She opens this glass door and she sees this body falling, so she's being reminded of her sister, who she thinks she let down and die. And the two of them, of course, afterwards go to hug it out. So they're like checking out like some pictures afterwards. And then Lois hears Gage crying and then picks him up from the cat, who's now there for somehow. And he goes back to Judd to talk more about, who talks about all these books and tribes and stuff of that nature. And Lois tries to inject the dead cat. He proceeds to cage him and then leave him out in the middle of like a street. So we cut to Ellie's birthday. So Lois goes up to her, and then they're having their little moment, and then the kids hide. Ellie hides like further down the street. And she sees that Church is making his way back at this point. And Gage starts to run out toward the street as this truck is speeding through. And before Gage runs out into the street completely, Gage is saved. But further down on that street was the daughter. So we already know that the daughter is hit. So Lois goes on ahead, sees the body, forlorns. We cut to the the burial of the daughter. He briefly looks to Judd, who kind of shakes his head, kind of knowingly what he's kind of thinking. They have Gage leave with with the mom's parents, and Judd says he's sorry, and then kind of tried to say don't bring her back, or don't bring things back. The last time we did it, that was kind of a mistake. But Lewis ends up like drugging him, and he ends up getting hauled by Rachel. So he does some grave digging, brings up the body. Meanwhile, Rachel's looking up at her cabinet, seeing some blood. And we see that Gage can now see the dead man, or the dead kid, I should say. So that's why the Gage is constantly freaking out. So, Lewis doesn't place the rocks on the body, which they did for the cat. Hears some noises and then makes his way back. He eventually sees Church there, back at the house. He heads outside. He sees some footprints have made their way inside. He starts to follow them down. He finds this cat mask, and then behind him, there she is, Ellie reincarnated. So he tries to clean her up, sees that much like the cat, her hair is very rough, and when he pulls her hair back to the main point, he sees that it has been stitched back together. So he brings her to the bed, and then she sort of asks about if she has died. And then she's kind of like, well, I want you to stay with me, and stuff like that. We see that Judd wakes up, and noises are made, and things are being messed with. So this wakes up not Judd, Jeff. Not Jeff. What's his name? Lois. Yeah. So she's trying to do ballet again, but she's much more clumsy. Not clumsy, but she's now purposely smashing things, and then this upsets him to no degree, and then she's mad at him now. So Rachel, we learn, leaves a message while she's in traffic saying that she is going to be coming back with Gage for some reason. And she calls Judd to check up on him. So Judd comes over, talks about the whole coming back aspect. Ellie overhears this, gets angry. He sees Ellie in the window as he makes his way back to his own home. He takes out his gun, hears bang in his own home. He heads upstairs, where he looks around, and as he makes his way back out, he is stabbed on the way down, and he misfires, and the body transforms when wearing the mask into his former wife, and turns back into the daughter, the main daughter. So Rachel and Gage return. They see her in her changed form, and Rachel freaks out. And now Ellie's like, oh, I don't want her here because she doesn't want me here. Uh, and he hears this, by the way, the husband, and he's like, "Yeah, whatever." It's kind of dumb. Um, so Rachel's dealing with her own stuff still, and in fact, when she sees the body again, she's visualizing herself getting this sort of like body torture done to her, and the other bodies of her sisters, like dead sisters, like reforming. And when she wakes up, Ellie is trying to stab her, trying to stab Rachel, and Ellie gives chase. Meanwhile, Lois is already had moved on to Judd's house, sees that he's dead. Um, all the while, as he makes his way back, Rachel, who still has Gage with him in that room, drops Gage into the father's arms as he's dropped very daringly to that state. But she is stabbed in the process by the daughter. Uh, so Ellie proceeds to drag the mother away, and eventually hits what's his name, Lois, when he comes back. So he wakes up, and he's like running after, trying to look out for Rachel and stuff. Ellie attacks him. He fights her off, and she distracts him long enough for him to get impaled in the back by the now dead Rachel. So we see now that the house, I forget which house, but one of the houses is now being burnt to the ground. And we see, I forgot to where I put this in the notes, but after Lois saved Gage, he proceeded to hide him in the car. So we cut back to the car where Gage is sitting there, and we see the dead trio family and the cat as well sort of pop up and make their way over with the dad with the gasoline in hand. And that is where the movie ends, as they make their way toward the car, and we see Gage, I think, open the door or unlock the door. And that was Pet Sematary. I did mention that one dumb thing about like the dad not realizing what the daughter was saying, but other than that, and some odd acting from the father, from other moments of like lack of acting, I think this movie's pretty dang solid. As I said, I have not seen most of the original Pet Sematary, so I don't know how it stacks up against the original. I will say, for the sake of just reviewing this, it's fine. Dealing with death, coming back, there is a little bit of setup to get to that, but there are kind of like, again, some smaller moments I think they could have cut, like the whole little band of masked individual kids that sort of roam, a very unnecessary little moment. Little things like that I think they could have cut and just added a little bit more towards either the middle-ish or endish part, just to flesh out some of this other stuff that is a little bit... It does feel a little bit rushed, I feel, toward the end, but other than that, pretty solid. So that is my review of Pet Sematary, and if you enjoyed it, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my Discord server, the other to my Patreon page. Any donations are greatly appreciated. Until next time, everyone, bye-bye.